I've been through the desert on a horse with no name.
That is the band America singing their biggest hit, Horse with No Name. They had hit after hit back in the 1970s, but they didn't stop then. They've been touring all over the world for over 43 years. We were just on the road with America, where they told us their whole story in their own words.
1, 2, 3, 4.
We met in high school. Our dads were in the U.S. Air Force, and we were stationed outside of London. So we were going to the same high school together, class of '69, and we played together in high school bands. We played at teen clubs and played every Friday night, kind of cover stuff. And it wasn't until after we graduated that we'd started writing our own material and put the actual official America name on it.
As far as chemistry, we were just friends, you know. We really did bond, and I think being American teenagers in London in the '60s was a special time to be a teenager anywhere, but being in swing in London. So we really hit it off, and I think that's been a big factor with our longevity.
Chewing on a piece of grass, walking down the road.
We were known as the American kids there. It's a very small London music community, and we were kind of started to get a little bit of a reputation around town, playing with our 3 acoustic guitars in record company offices and trying to get something going. So we were the American kids, so America just seemed natural.
There was a jukebox on the bass called the Americana, and that is true, but I think we already had the name at that point, and that was a sign. Oh, it must be right. But there was already Chicago, the group Chicago, and we just thought we'd take it another step further and call it America.
Living on the riverside, taking it all in my stride.
Our influences have remained the same pretty well from the start. Growing up in the '60s, the Beatles and the Beach Boys were 2 incredibly important acts, and I think to this day we still quote them as being the top of
Yeah, those
our...
are pretty primary, I guess, influences. I mean, we were raised in some of the earlier '50s music, the Everly Brothers and so on. Surf music, I really liked, instrumental stuff like that. But I mean, when it got right down to it, those vocal harmonies, and you know, Brian Wilson and Lennon McCartney, the Beatles, and so on. Those are all just ingrained in our, you know, we were all ears, all eyes.
I've been through the desert on a horse with no name. It felt good to be out of the rain.
Our first album was recorded as a project in England that didn't include Horse with No Name. And then the label decided to put us back in the studio because they didn't really hear a single. So the 2 projects, the single and the album, are really 2 different things. And it wasn't until 6 months later when the US label wanted to release the project, and they sent over the parts. Here's the parts to print the single, here's the parts to print the album. And they had run off 100,000 copies before they realized that the single wasn't on the album. So it's one of those unique collector's items that if you're lucky, you get the one without the song.
You see, I've been through the desert on a horse with no name. It felt good to be out of the rain.
I wrote it and called it Desert Song. At the time when I was first starting to write songs, I would just put Moon Song or Rainbow Song or something, and then kind of go back and maybe retitle. In the case of those 2, I didn't retitle them, but that was called Desert Song. But our producer very wisely said, oh no, you must call it, our first producer, you must call it Horse with No Name. That's the hook. And I said, okay.
I need you like the flower needs the rain. You know I need you.
The Grammy for Best New Artist in 1972 was a thrill. We were on the road. We didn't appear at the Grammys, and it was great. We were up against the Eagles and Loggins and Messina, John Prine and Harry Chapin, all great artists that we really respected. The Eagles were coming up kind of at the same time as us, so it was kind of a shock.
Don't cross the river if you can't swim the tide.
We went to school with Dan Peek, and he was, you know, a founding member of the band. He did leave the group in '77, so even though I suppose we started in late '70, he was there for all those years. He was a friend for longer than that.
Yeah, and his contributions are in stone. I mean, Lonely People, Don't Cross the River, those first 5 albums, 6 albums, I don't want to undercut Dan's influence, and He was. We were the Three Musketeers there, and we rode around in a little van in England up and down the M1, opening for bands like Traffic and Pink Floyd, and all three of us in the back seat. And so Dan was an integral member. He'll always be part of America. And we were shocked when he passed away.
Well, I never did give nothing to the Tin Man that he didn't already have.
George Martin, of course, everybody is interested in that, as we were at the time. George Martin had done all the Beatles work, virtually all of it, and was available. And we were approaching our fourth album. It was 1974, and George Martin was in town, and we said, well, if we're going to get a producer, let's see if we can grab Mr.
Yeah, we
Martin.
started at the top of the list, and we didn't have to go any further.
We went on to make 7 albums with George, and we're still dear friends, and it was a wonderful experience. He's a great guy.
I understand you've been running from a man that goes by the name of the Sandman.
We do about 100 shows a year, more on some years, a little bit less on others. But if you double that, that gives you a rough idea how many days. So 100 shows is about 200 days of travel, and it's a lot. As we're getting on in our years, I feel it personally a little bit more. But
I feel it, yeah. It's pretty grueling, you know. We've hit the 60-year mark, and we're it's tough stuff. It's a wonderful thing to realize that you were a tiny cog in this giant music world, and people still are interested in your influence or those songs. They want to see you play them live. And it's really rewarding to be able to still do that now.
You can do magic. You can have anything that you desire.
it's obviously a family thing. You know, people see now it started as 3 and it's 2 in the images, but on stage it's always been 5, at least 5, and so it's a nice tight-knit group. It runs pretty smooth.
Ventura Highway in the sunshine.
We got a star on the Hollywood Walk of
Thank
Fame.
you very much. Now that they've got that together, I tell you. Obviously they do those ceremonies fairly regularly, but we were amazed. So it was a fantastic day for us. Everybody in our organization was there. It was nice to share that.
It's a great honor, yeah, but to have a star there is really special.
If you want to find out where the band is playing right now, don't just Google America. A lot of other stuff will probably pop up. Go to the band's website, VenturaHighway.com. We'll be right back.